Here.
Dr. Bustles,
Here.
Mr. Brennan, Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Mr. Duval,
Present.
Mayor Rickaman.
Here. Reverend McDowell, do you mind saying a few words?
Yes. Let us pray. For all that has been done, for the tremendous blessings you've already bestowed upon each of us. We simply ask that you might touch us, fill us with your love and your kindness. Continue to grow our city in such a way that folks' lives are changed and renewed. Be with everyone gathered in this room today. Allow them to sense and feel your nearness. We ask it and we claim it in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Before we start, Reverend McDowell and I had an opportunity to go to a marker unveiling today for Miss Hetty Anderson. And y'all, it's pretty incredible that there's constantly history surfacing here about individuals that are connected to Columbia. For you who don't know, she actually was the model for the double eagle coin and several other very distinct pieces of art, and they're actually reproducing that. But incredible lady who lived in New York, from Columbia, moved back to Columbia. And it's just interesting every time we have an opportunity to learn more about our history and the people that were involved with it. I thought it was pretty special today.
Where's the marker?
It's down on Taylor Street, 600 block.
Tell him why.
It's number 223. We have 223 markers in Richland County.
200
historic.
from Ed.
Yeah, well, no, we're not talking about street namings.
Oh, well,
We're talking about markers.
okay.
No, there's about 3 blocks left in the city of Columbia to be named.
Hetty Anderson was an African-American female. A lot of folk didn't know that history until it was revealed to me almost 6 months ago. And I had an opportunity to read something about her. Something about her that was intriguing. She was called the most beautiful person in the United States. Check it out. You'd be surprised at the number of sites in Columbia where there is a significant African-American presence. And that's what we are doing. That's what the mayor is trying to do, is identify those places. And we thank you all. Today, she doesn't have a tombstone. They are erecting a tombstone in her honor at Randolph Cemetery.
Is it Elmwood or Randolph?
I think she said Randolph Cemetery. But please go by there and look at that marker. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Ms. Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. We are moving forward with our next budget workshop today. 2 big items, and the first is a comprehensive update from Columbia Water. Mr. Clint Shealy, our Assistant City Manager of Columbia Water, will lead that discussion. We'll incorporate our water and sewer update, but also the fiscal year 2023-2024 water and sewer financial plan, the stormwater system update with all of his team members and our external assistance from Robert Chambers as well. And Mr. Mayor, I know you would agree that I wanted to give a shout out to Clint because he was particularly helpful to you and me over the last several days when we were in Washington and really doing some great advocacy work for the benefits of the citizens of Columbia and getting our canal repaired. So we want to thank you for that. You did a great job.
Thank you. Thank y'all for including me in that. And I don't want to be too overly optimistic, but early indications are it's bearing some really good fruit. We'll find out more tomorrow. And so really excited, and y'all did an unbelievable job. And really cool experience.
Really cool
It was really
experience.
good. Thank y'all for including me in that. Thank you for the opportunity to share an update about Columbia Water and what we're doing, what your team is doing. I'm really proud of the work that these folks are doing. We've got Tiffany Latimer and Dana Higgins and Frank Eskridge and the team, many members of the team here today. In case there are any hard questions, they're the ones that will know the answers. But what they're doing every day to serve our customers is really, really strong work, and it gets better every day. And I just want to say thank you to y'all in public for what you do for us. So appreciate you. We wanted to share just a little information, and I'll try to be as brief as I can because the smooth tones of Robert Chambers will be after me. And I know
I've heard that album. I'm not sure I want to hear it again.
Let's start off with a little organizational assessment and restructuring. As we looked at Columbia Water as an organization, we've got the priorities. Number one, customer service and being responsive, and then being efficient and using technology to our best to benefit our customers. And then we also wanted to make sure we had appropriate span of control within our how we manage the work, how we balance that work, and that we're giving a consistent response every time to serve our customers' needs. Some of the recommendations that are coming out of that, a little restructuring we're doing with customer care, many of you know about already, and so we'll talk about that. Consolidation of some management areas in Frank's area of responsibility as well. What he's done, looking at cutting back positions. You'll see a net decrease of 13 positions, at least, in Columbia Water in this year's proposed budget, and 5 that are at least at a management, if not a senior management level position. So we're looking to try to make sure we've got appropriate folks in the right position so they can be successful. That's going to generate some opportunity for existing staff, which we think is great for them to grow and continue in their career. So a little bit more about the restructuring. You can see the red arrows, and instead of the customer care division, we now have the Department of Customer Services, and that our director is Miss Tiffany Latimer. I'm so proud of Tiffany and what she's done with that team and just helping that continue to grow. It was a logical progression as we move from manually meeting readers to our manually reading meters to our AMI process to move that data collection and effort and consistency with getting accurate reads into our customer services group that are out checking and doing turn-ons and turn-offs. So that has happened. Tiffany's got some obvious communication and marketing skills as well. So now she's going to be providing direct oversight over our little communications group that pushes out messages for Columbia Water, including our boil water advisories, traffic advisories, et cetera. So really proud of her. And then I mentioned some of the things that Frank is doing as well and the restructuring that we've got coming up there, making sure that we're being consistent and efficient in how we do field operations, whether or not it's fixing a water leak or repairing a sewer backup. A lot of these activities, there's a lot of synergy there, managing a warehouse, doing these types of things. So really excited about what's happening there. I'm going to let Tiffany talk for a few minutes about the things that she's doing as our new director.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very honored for the promotion, the new position. I think it definitely helps us to improve our services as far as our responsiveness to our customers and just move in more of a positive direction. As you know, customer service, our customers and our citizens are at the forefront of what we do and why we do it. So I'm delighted just to share highlight some of the things that we have done in the past few years in the customer services department. Many of these you already are aware of, but like I said, I just kind of want to highlight some of these things and then give you a little bit of information as far as our future objectives for our customer services department. So to begin, who can tell me in the last several years, prior to the last several years, what was our most common complaint received from our customers and our citizens when calling? You let me Yes, absolutely.
Hey, this is Jeopardy. I'm trying to win now.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. So in April of 2020, for example, our calls were, average wait time was as high as 30 minutes with a 25% abandon rate. So yes, that was our most common complaint that we received from our customers and our citizens in previous years. So in the last few years, we've done a number of things to rectify that huge issue in an effort to provide our customers and our citizens with quicker, more responsive service as what they deserve. So one of those things, in October of 2020, we upgraded our phone system to the NICE inContact platform, which is through AT&T as our vendor. That included features such as a virtual callback option, which you probably are aware of and probably have experienced before, where it holds your place in line. You can hang up and then you'll get a call back once a representative is available. It also included online chat. So we introduced online chat and we use that every day. Also, it includes wallboard monitoring, which is, if you can see that picture at the top, we didn't have those in our call center prior to this change, but we have them now, and it's been a great benefit as far as staff accountability and just so our supervisors can always know what's going on as far as our call wait times, our call handling times, and those things. Also, in another common complaint that we got besides the call wait time, a huge one was also just being able to get service with us. So wanting to set up water and sewer service was somewhat of a lengthy process, and pretty much to me, it was just a matter of a lot of paper. Customers had to actually fill out a contract and bring it in to us face to face, or they would have to email it and fax it. So in September of 2021, we went to a online process where customers can now submit their contracts online from our website, which of course provides quicker processing and submission. So that's been very, very beneficial. We've seen our numbers as far as our contracts go up quite a bit on a daily basis since we've implemented the online form. Another thing we've done is we have, there was a requirement that required for anyone to get new service, they had to provide a rental agreement or they had to provide home purchasing documents. So we've eliminated that requirement to make it easier for our customers to get service and get business with us. Another thing about that as well, we had customers that once they filed submitted the application, they would have to call us in order to have us process it over the phone. So we eliminated that as well. So now, of course, when they submit their application, they get an automatic email saying that their contract is being processed and they don't have to call us. So those are just a few things as far as setting up new service with us that we have changed over the last few years to make it easier for our customers. As you know, we opened up 3000 Hardin Street, our customer and payment center, providing free parking to our customers, as well as our customer service reps have private offices where our customers can come in and speak with a representative one-on-one, to discuss matters as far as their sewer billing, water billing, stormwater, and also they can also submit contracts there. And then, of course, the drive-through. The drive-through has been a great convenience to our customers over there at Hardin Street, so we are very excited about opening up that location over there on Hardin Street. Huge, big change, March of 2022. Prior to that, as you know, many of you know, we operated as a 24-hour call center. So with the support of our Mayor Rickenmann, Ms. Wilson, our executive team leadership, we were able to go to Monday through Friday as far as our main hours. We hired an answering service called Answering Plus to handle our emergency-only after-hours calls. So they handle our calls during the holidays, the weekends, and after 6 o'clock Monday through Friday. Of course, as you can imagine, that helped increase morale in our department and motivation as well, as far as with our staff. So that was a huge change, and so far we've heard nothing but good things from the answering service. Anytime there's issues, they're very responsive, and it's just a matter of a phone call if there's any concerns or issues. Most recently, this past January, with the help of our IT department and other department personnel, we upgraded our billing system. So we are still with Hanson Technologies, which is our previous vendor that we've had, but we've upgraded the system which has included some enhancements for our customers. One being a phone number lookup, so customers don't have to remember that 16-digit customer code number anymore. They can just put their phone number in to access their account. So a huge, huge benefit for our customers to be able to get the information. Am I clicking on something?
I don't think it's using
Okay.
emails.
Okay, so yes, another thing is our customers can now make payment arrangements over the phone. So they don't have to speak with us live, they can just make the payment arrangements over the phone. Of course, there are certain criteria, so everyone is not able to make one, but depending on, if you've defaulted 3 times in the last 12 months, there's just some criteria that's built in, but that's been, like I said, another huge benefit just to allow our customers not necessarily having to speak with us, but to do those things through the IVR, which is our interactive voice response system. So, as like I said, as far as just some of these technology advancements we've done over the last few years to make things a little bit easier for our customers, I just want to share some information with you. Not only do, we service as far as just new accounts and a host of other things as far as just processing mail and contracts and helping other department requests, but our assistance programs. So we've been able to help many of customers, just inform them about, information and programs that are out there available to them to assist them with paying their water and sewer bills. I just wanted to share a couple numbers with you here. So since last July, our customer assistance program, which is through the city, was able to help over 300 customers with a total amount of funds of over $130,000. 420 customers were assisted with a total of over $230,000 in funds from the South Carolina Homeowners Rescue Program. And then over 1,400 customers were assisted, funds totaling over $670,000 in funds from the Low Income Water Assistance Program. Some future objectives for the Customer Services Department include a campaign to increase paperless billing. That's just something I'm looking forward to doing because we spend quite a bit of money, as you can imagine, in postage and delivery and printing costs. Providing a payment option for customers on our online website to just pay as a guest. Sometimes, like I said, people don't always have their account number information, so just to pay as a guest. That's quicker, easier. So that is something that we know that we have the capability to be able to do. Also, possible automated service reconnections, which means allowing a customer to be able to pay their past due amount, and then an automated reconnection service is created. So that's just another objective that we're looking into for the future. And then to increase our customer engagement through our Eye on Water tool that allows customers to track their consumption and set alerts, so we know our numbers aren't where we want them to be, but we're always looking at increasing those numbers and increasing that customer engagement. So that is just a few things I wanted to highlight about just kind of where we've been. And speaking back on the high wait times, I'm proud to say over the last year, our average call wait time has been 5 minutes or less every single month for the last year. So that's been a huge change from where we were. That is all I have. Is there any questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Tiffany, that's an excellent report, and all the things you do are decreasing the calls that we as council members get. And the AMI, phone calls went way down with AMI. I think the city manager needs to study the possibility of eliminating a couple of council seats this year. We don't have enough work to do with all the stuff that they're doing to help the customers. You started in 24, Barry.
I think what he's saying, he's gonna resign early. I do wanna say that, this is exactly, when we all met in our strategic plan and planning sessions and sat down and said, we want our budget to reflect investment in training technology into our employees and giving them the autonomy to do their job. This is exactly what we anticipated. And that everything that's happened is because we allowed our staff to do what they needed to do because we gave them the tools and the technology to do it. I think it's great. It really has tremendously cut down on calls to council and city hall.
Did they take care of your digit number on your, paying your bill?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you don't, now that you can use your phone, you don't have the missing digit. For those who have ever paid their bill late, that we used to get a bill that didn't have your full digit on. So if you went online, you couldn't actually pay your bill. You didn't have all the digits.
Interesting.
Tiffany, do we have the capability, I'm sorry, Dr. Wilson.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I think this really speaks to where we started a year ago about wanting to improve interactions with the city, and we have the, you know, the data and some of the technology really to back that up. And I wanted to give a compliment. One of our constituents in Elmwood reached out, and they had used one of the online technologies to put a work order in for Columbia Water, and she said someone came out in 30 minutes. And she was like, "Are you sure this is the city?" I was like, "Yes, this is the city." I think it really speaks to us really, you know, prioritizing that experience is time. It's gonna happen on time, and we're gonna be consistent about it. So thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Just want to echo everybody's comments. Y'all are doing a fantastic job. For the one or two that we do hear about, the not so positive interactions with customer service, do you have the capability to go back and listen to that exchange, you know, and use that as a learning lesson for our wonderful staff?
Yes, sir, we do. All calls are recorded, so absolutely.
And is that something y'all do?
We do. We have audits, so our supervisors do random audits. But if there's, you know, some, of course, that are in particular that we need to go back, we can definitely do that because of, you know, all the calls being recorded.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Tiffany.
And she's just getting started. So it's really, really good. And thank you, Mayor, for making the comment about, and Dr. Buss, about just, you know, empowering the staff, the team to get it done. They've got great ideas, much more to come, but having the tools to do that, really, really important. And, so Tiffany, thank you. I wanted to give her plenty of time to talk about these really, really good things that we've done. So I'll pick up the pace a little bit. Part of this organizational assessment, we looked at benchmarking ourselves versus other utilities. American Water Works Association is one of the groups we're invited to participate in their annual surveys, and so they're surveying utilities across the nation. We looked at some of the results with the help of Brian Culley and their team with CDM Smith, and it validates that we need to improve on customer service and responsiveness, staff retention and recruitment, and we need to invest in infrastructure renewal. Those are some of the things that came out of it. I'm not going to do a deep dive, but a couple of the stats about, you know, who responded. We tried to look at our staffing level, number of, you know, full-time equivalents that we have versus some of our peers, what our normalized costs are, things like line leaks and breaks and complaints and SSOs, those types of things that are typically reported. Every utility is a little bit different, so it's not always an apples-to-apples comparison, but we try to do the best we could with the data that we had. What it's showing us is that if we're fully staffed, that our number of accounts per full-time employee is somewhere in the middle there, probably about where it should be. Of course, we're not fully staffed, but if we could get fully staffed with our request for this year, then we'd be feeling pretty good about how we compare to other utilities. Part of our system, we are the capital city, but we've got 2,300 miles of water distribution piping. So a lot of utilities that serve 400,000 people in a much more urban area have 1/3 to 1/2 the miles of pipe that we have. So we've got a very rural component to our system as well, which makes it a little more difficult to maintain. The pretty efficient with respect to the number of FTEs per million gallons of water produced and wastewater collected, a little below average there. And so very poor, however, in employee retention. Our tenure less than 5 years now organizationally, and that's concerning, and a pretty high turnover rate. So continuing to work in those areas to improve and try to reach best in class is really, really important for us. Complaints and work orders, no surprise there. We're not doing great in that area because of the age and condition of our system and needing to continue to invest in infrastructure. We did do fairly well, very, very low in cost per million gallon treated, and that's strictly operation and maintenance cost per million gallon treated, both in water and wastewater. So
He's based on 22 or current,
22,
or
I
21?
believe, let's see, 22, yes, sir, 22. So looking a little further, we wanted to look at our backlog. We didn't stare too much at the American Water Works Association survey. You just got to live where you are and do better with what you've got. So, but it is nice to compare and see where we've got strengths and weaknesses as an organization. We continue to track this backlog of work orders, and we look at that every month. Actually, we look at it quite more frequently than that, but we're sharing that every month. Continuing to have quite a few vacancies in our field positions in both water distribution and wastewater collection. Looking to hopefully do something with that this coming year. The part of the strategy that we've been using is a blended strategy of trying to staff up and also use small local contractors where we don't have the people in the bodies in the positions right now. The work's got to get done. We've got to reduce this backlog. And so this current fiscal year, we funded collectively, you allowed us to do $4 million worth of leak repair and restoration and asphalt paving restoration work. This year, we're seeing the need in order to whittle that backlog down. We'd like to take that up to $6.5 million of funding. Just again, to be aggressive, be responsive in driving that backlog down.
Now, are you tying in this into investments into technology to allow the workflow system to be much more efficient? You know, I mean, I think that was one of the things that we struggled with was getting those work orders to the appropriate place. Obviously, even with the third-party contractors, we had some. Is there a new seamless way to create that so that, you know, when you finish doing what we do best, which is to fix the leak, having that immediately sent to a third party to go patch it? I mean, our goal should be within 48 hours that hole is filled and done.
Yes, sir. And it is improving. We're not there yet, Mayor, but we're much better than we were in terms of City Works, generating the work orders, capturing all the work in the system. What we've done is refined our process of working with these small local contractors. They're operating as almost an extension of staff now, and that the cost effectiveness is improving and the efficiency and speed at which the repairs are made are improving. So that is something, and I'll show you a cost graphic here in a moment that kind of demonstrates, rather than pulling things together as a batch and then putting them out for bid, we're just making phone calls and saying, I need you to go fix X, Y, and Z today, and they're getting it done. So that is working and working better.
And what's the quality and control kind of process to make sure the contractors, because you see a lot of the work that's done.
Yes,
I think
sir.
I pointed out several in District 3.
Yes, sir.
It's good for a couple of days, but then that sinkhole starts to come back after a subcontractor's been on it.
Sinkhole will come back, the water leak springs again, those sorts of things. We've got a dedicated project manager sitting at Beltline for water distribution and a dedicated project manager with inspectors for wastewater work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the system that we've implemented. So we're laying eyes when those contractors are out there, we're putting our eyes on their work and making sure it gets done correctly. Part of that repetition problem, if they're putting a repair coupling on a really old brittle pipe, it's going to break 10 feet.
But does the
away.
rework take priority in the list of catch-up jobs?
Yes, sir, it does, because usually they're working in that area and they'll circle back. Now, if it takes 3 months to give way again, they move somewhere
Right, yeah.
else, it's a little
Understood.
different. But
Okay.
so we are trying to watch that very closely.
Great, thank you.
So in terms of work, I wanted to show you a graph of service requests and our trend and work orders in our trend. You remember we had really hard freeze around Christmas and our work order backlog, that progress we were making, that downward trend flattened out and went up a little bit. Part of that moving back up was also in January and February and March, we put a concerted effort into clearing this log jam of service requests. So when a customer calls the 545-3300 number to report a leak, we may get 3 or 4 or 5 calls about that same leak. Each of those generates a service request. So we've got this backlog of service requests that would only generate one work order because they're all about the same leak. So you may have a 4 to 10 to 1 ratio, you know, but sometimes it's 1 to 1. Hey, the service line in my yard is leaking. So we wanted to do everything we could to try to clear that backlog of service requests, which generated work orders that have to be worked, but now we're starting to trend back down on work orders as well. So the holidays generated work orders, but also a whole lot of service requests that we needed to try to, you can see the spike in December there on the left. So on average, we receive 1,280 new service requests every month. That generates about 790 work orders each month. Some things come in as a work order and not a service request, but that's kind of the baseline. The monthly flow that you're looking at is 790 or so work orders. We'd love to see that backlog pushed down to the flow coming in. Once we get there, then we can start thinking about, okay, what's our level of service? How quickly are we getting these repaired? And starting to look at what best-in-class operation looks like. And we're getting there. We are reducing this trend, and I think the changes that we're proposing with additional contractor support is going to help us this coming year.
Is there a reason
System-wide,
why?
that's not just municipality, the 790
Yes, sir. That is our utility.
utility.
Yes, sir. Not in the city limits alone. It's everywhere.
Do you all have an idea of why we're seeing a drop in terms of staff?
So yes, ma'am. We saw a bit of a surge. We made some adjustments. We did the essential $2 an hour raise for field employees, and we're seeing a little bit of a dip now. And hoping that trend turns. I think we made 5 offers last week, so just seeing some turn in those positions. We do have a strategy that we're going to propose in this year's budget as well that we think will stabilize that and maybe improve the retention rate in our field staff. So that's a great question. I wanted to show you a little comparison about, and this is a comparison that we did ourselves. So I'll be very transparent about that, of what we're paying contractors under different delivery models versus what our staff could make those repairs for. Is something, Mayor, that y'all had asked for last year, just to kind of get an idea. What it's showing us, and we've got a couple of different metrics here, does it include a yard restoration or not? But the first 3 bars are if city staff does it, the last 2 are a model of contracting out. And there are certain things that contractors can do at roughly the same cost that we can, and there are certain things that we can do a lot cheaper. And we looked at double overhead rates, equipment carrying costs, those sorts of things, and tried to make sure we had an apples-to-apples comparison. That is difficult to do, but I want to point out the meter sets, which is the 4th bar graph over. We're seeing that the contractors can set meters and install new taps pretty darn efficiently. And so I think we got 400 going out. They're working probably next week on setting new meters there. That's something that they can do and do quickly and be very effective.
Did you factor in time?
Yeah, time and manpower.
Because one of the things is, I think the reason why we're trying some of this is, yes, we have the capability to do it, but when you add in the time factor that it takes us to get there because of our limited resources, the costs are much different, because we're all dealing with it.
Yes, sir. The staff
So
time.
I get what you're doing, and you're right, there's some things, but I think you got to factor that in too.
Yes, sir. I hear you loud and clear. And this would be if we had a clean slate and we had a team ready to go versus the contract had a team ready to go. Unfortunately, we don't have a clean slate. We've got a pretty significant backlog. We don't have the option. That's why we've got to use both. We've got to have our team, and we want to get that team sized appropriately so that they can handle that 790 that are coming in every month. And so one day we won't have to we'll probably always need contractors, but we won't have to use them as aggressively as we're doing right now. But we're a little ways away from that. So, and I think adding a little more juice to that this next year is going to help us be even more responsive. So I show this just to say, and you can see some of the far right bars where if we package these up and bid them out, we pay more. But if we can use them based on unit pricing that the contractors have given us, time and material pricing, unit pricing for labor for the jobs, and use them as an extension of staff, which is that next to the right bar, we get a little better value there. So that's the model that we're trying to use more of.
Did you make a model on the complete repair?
So
So, because most of that is things that we do very well. Where we have the big gap is going back and getting rid of the plate, getting the whole field, getting the asphalt, getting the landscaping done, all those things that backlogged us. Have you done a look at that, at the secondary side to that?
Mayor, this would capture the cost, but it wouldn't capture the pain and suffering and time to get it done for the customer. So when we do it ourselves, it's making a repair, it's sending it over to Public Works and Robert's team and Street Division, particularly paving. You know, they're
It's Robert's not
woefully
here.
understaffed. He's coming. He knows I'm going to say this. They're woefully understaffed as well. So it's really a challenge for them to get out and do that paving. So now we might fix a repair and then call a contractor to do the patch. So kind of blending those models together. So,
You're saying that the contractor lead time is significantly different than the staff lead time?
yes, sir, it is right now. Yes, sir, it is significantly. Our response time is significantly greater based on, and we've got relationships with these contractors now. They're dedicating crews and we're keeping them busy doing our work. So that extension of staff model seems to be working
Paying
pretty
a
well.
premium to tighten up the timeline.
We are, yes, sir, yes, sir.
And I
But
think we would say we cut down from 6,800 orders to.
that's exactly right.
So we made significant progress, and I think if we can get caught up and levelize the service calls.
We're not where we want to be, but we wouldn't be anywhere close if we didn't have the contractor
I
support.
wouldn't be getting those emails and those phone calls.
They stopped calling about water bills and us not answering the phone.
Phone service?
So with these contracting opportunities, there are opportunities for small local businesses, and we continue to try to work with our Aisha and the OBO team to expand those opportunities. So I just wanted to let y'all know is expanded funding is going to mean more expanded opportunities for folks.
And just as memory serves me, I think one of the challenges that we seemed to have back then, it was how we were having to procure for stuff. We had added so many layers that it made it hard for us to procure, like some of the landscape and other things. Have we kind of now at the point that figured out where those hurdles are, levelized it so we can get it to those small businesses so that they can do those things that will benefit us and the customer?
Yes, sir, we absolutely have. We've worked with the Department of Procurement and Contracts, and they've allowed us a lot of flexibility to do this unit price work and select contractors based on qualifications. We're looking to package up some of this work and send it out to protege only or CDBE type contractors working with OBO to give more opportunity for them as well. We've had 2 projects that the CDBE contractor bid, and we required that a CDBE contractor make the taps under the supervision of somebody that's already on our approved tapping list. Mayor, we sat in this conference room and talked about that strategy. So we've had 2 contractors get some experience that way and are working to try to expand on that as well. So I wanted to touch real briefly on economic development successes. Everybody knows about Scout Motors. You can't pick up the paper really without hearing about that. But I really just want to emphasize water and sewer are a major driver for economic development. When we talk to these prospects, it used to be water and sewer was there would be a delay to get service to them and power was there immediately. Now it's, I can't get your transformer for another 12 months, but the water and sewer is there. And so we've really been marketing these industrial parks strong, and that Blythewood would not have happened, Scout Motors wouldn't have happened if we didn't have such a strong utility up there. And then the investments that Columbia made predating me to bring that 48-inch water line across the northern part of the county, slam dunk. I mean, it really just, it made it easy. So
I was just curious, what kind of revenue will we get out of this project for the next 15 years?
So, Mr. Brown, it's about 1 million gallon a day customer, and I'm going to have to get the number for you. I'd calculated it, their average bill, and I just can't remember it off the top of my head.
I'd like to see this like a pro forma for the
Yes,
next
sir.
15 years on this.
Absolutely. And the beauty of this one is, based on some feedback we had from council, we we really worked with Department of Commerce in Richland County and said, we got some projects we got to do, and we don't have any money to do it. So if you want us to, and this is on the wastewater side, if you want us to serve them, and we're the only game in town that can handle an industry like that, we need some help, and we got $35 million to make improvements.
It's one of the few things we can actually leverage.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that really worked out well for us.
And Clint, you're being gracious. I mean, the negotiation went very well without him having to offer incentivizing anything. I mean, they were very willing, as he told them, that, we didn't need to try to come up with a special rate or anything like that.
Yes, ma'am.
Negotiating's easier when you're the only game in town.
Well, that's true, but there had always also been times where things were put on the table as if we still should have. And so I appreciate him handling it the way he did.
Clint must have high self-esteem.
The side in Mississippi was the other game that we were playing against. Yes, sir.
We've had Mark Anthony on one side of town and Scout on the other side of town that are big water users. How much more capacity do we have?
So up for Blythewood Industrial Park, we estimated they're going to use 1 million gallons a day. There's going to be some support industry up there. We estimated 8 to 10 million gallons of excess capacity to serve that site. That is a 48-inch super highway of water, an interstate pipeline delivering it to the northeast, and also to serve that future development. So that was kind of baked into the equation. And with the improvements that we'll be making, we'll have several million gallons a day of sewer as well. We expect the excess capacity. We expect the residential growth that'll happen, that's our water service area is going to be really good for us tangentially around that site. It's already booming out there. So I did want to mention, I've spoken to council, it's been several years ago, about a wastewater distribution service area dispute that we had with, at the time, Nye America. It had been Palmetto Utilities, now it's Southwest Water, South Carolina Water Utilities. Part of this industrial park, all of it sits either in disputed area on who should serve it, or it sits in Southwest Water service area. They can't handle a categorical industrial discharge, so Richland County asked us to serve. So, of course, we said we would be glad to, and I immediately called my counterpart at Southwest Water and I said, look, I'm not trying to pull a fast one on you. This is just reality of what's happening. This is going to be good for all of us if it hits. We didn't know if it would hit or not. So we've pulled Richland County to the table because they've got some wastewater service area tangential to this as well that they have no infrastructure in whatsoever. Southwest Water is interested in that. We've got a component of residential area that's in the disputed territory that we're willing to true up with them, give them that residential area. We take the big industrial customer that's categorical that they couldn't serve. We had talked about dividing this baby anyway and had tried to come up with some solutions. Those conversations just never matured. This is making those conversations mature. So you should see a memorandum of understanding and a request to the COG that'll be signed by the county, by Southwest Water, and by us to modify the 208 service area for wastewater and clean up these lines moving forward. So I'm glad that'll happen. And that's a legacy issue we've been dealing with for a while.
Is that enough to cover the trade?
We're still negotiating, but I think with the piece that Richland County is bringing in, I think we're going to be in good shape there. The only remaining piece is, there was a project on the other side, on the eastern side of Interstate 77, where we think a lot of suppliers will land. Southwest Water would love to serve that. If they're non-categorical industrial, they probably can. If they're categorical, they'll have to come to us. We're trying to work this out. I don't want to put a pipe under 77, another pipe under 77 if we're not going to have any customers. That wouldn't make sense. So we're trying to work all that out right now. I'm sorry, I'm getting long-winded. I apologize. Funding assistance, potentially good news based on the DC trip. I will know more tomorrow, and I will be sure to let y'all know as soon as I know on the canal recovery. We found out about the SCIP grants. If you remember, the state had allocated $900 or $950 million for water and sewer infrastructure grants. We stood here last year and talked about that as a component of our capital program. We were successful getting a $10 million award for the Crane Creek wastewater storage tank, which is great. We weren't successful at all for Rosewood water quality improvements, which stinks. And it really, we're a little upset about it. We're a utility that provides water, wastewater, and stormwater. Some other entities that are in the same geography you may have one entity providing water, one providing wastewater, one providing stormwater. Each of them may have gotten an award. We got one award.
Was that for phase 2 and 3 of Rosewood that we
We were
applied?
holding off on phase 1, Councilman, that was ready to go, having it ready. We sent it to procurement this morning after we found out we didn't get, they delayed, they actually added more funding, added another $450 million to it. But, so we're a little disappointed. We're going to do some debriefs with RIA.
Who can we talk to?
Miss Bonnie Ammons, I think, is the one.
Why don't we set up a meeting?
Yes, sir. We'll definitely do
Face to
that.
face has proven to work well for us. I think it's probably a good idea for us to sit down with Bonnie.
Dana and I described this very scenario to Miss Bonnie 5 months ago, probably.
You did.
And,
We'll bring some Rosewood residents along.
yes, yes, sir, that would be good.
Phase 3, phase
So,
3 risk.
Phase 1 of Rosewood went to procurement this morning. So we're moving on that job. We've got the funding to do it. We were holding off and hoping to do a little bit more with the skip dollars, but that's okay. We're going to show progress. That decision, those awards were actually delayed. They were supposed to be in by March 30th, March 31st, and they were delayed until, I think, came out yesterday, we heard. So
Is it because of the size that we are as a utility that they didn't want to grant us the money and rather loan us the money?
Mayor, they would love to loan us money, and I wish you could see Jeff's face by now. and we'll think about that in the future. But I think part of it is it's easy for them to draw a line for 10 million cap per organization. And I really think that's what happened. There's also a theory floating about amongst us that we got so much help with the Scout Motors. Well, they've already gotten 35 million. We're just going to give them 10 from the ARPA dollars.
Or should we have applied with 3 different applications, one for each in our
We
entities?
should have called ourselves Columbia Water in one and the city in the other. I don't. We talked about these things and really.
Let's do a follow-up.
Yes,
I think
sir.
it'd be good for us to
We
get.
absolutely will. We absolutely will. And we're going to continue that last bullet item, continue to leverage for Department of Commerce dollars as much as possible. So just really quickly, consent decree for wastewater. We're meeting our dates. We're on schedule. So I won't belabor that. We've moved from a lot of programs to a lot of project delivery. We've got to deliver these projects within a certain time frame, or we pay fines. We did just last week submit our force majeure request based on the impacts of COVID, and so that has gone into EPA. We're essentially asking for 2 years. So there's a lot of acronyms here and different pieces and parts, but we're asking for 2-year extension, and that'll time that we're required to deliver these projects or pay a fine. So a little more breathing room there would be helpful.
Get that extension.
We're very hopeful. Yes, sir. We're very hopeful. We know others have gotten extensions based on COVID that were in similar situations. And our request is legitimate. We absolutely had some legitimacy there. Our sanitary sewer overflow count continues to track down. That is progress. That's one of the key metrics that we've got to hit in order to get out of this consent decree one day. We had a difficult Easter weekend at Metro with a power outage. I probably saw some of those notifications. That was unfortunate, but working through that, and we learned some things there as well. These are the different programs where, again, everything right on track with submitting and meeting deadlines and completing those, but that moves us toward you've got to deliver the project. So that's what we're talking about now. This is some of the categories: infrastructure rehabilitation, supplemental, which is smaller pipes, think larger pipes on the left, smaller pipes next to left, and then capacity assurance, which is you can't grow anymore, you can't add any more flow unless you upsize this pipe. So those add up. Those first 3 columns add up to about $400 million worth of spend that's there, either active in design or in construction. And then we've got, of course, some other things that are related to the consent decree. We've spent about $400 million to date, those three columns. And we think that the totals will be about $950 million. That was information, Brian, you shared with us a few meetings ago, that, we're probably looking at a total spend of 950 now, not 750 as we had said. That's the inflation adjusted number. So we're about halfway there.
So how much more do we have to pay? Is it 500 million? A little less than 500?
So about 450 million left of projects to deliver as estimated with some inflation adjustment there.
Is
If we
the
can get some,
cost on the wastewater side versus the water side? Because
This is consent.
it's wastewater, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
some of the consent decree was on the water facility too, about 150 million, if I remember.
But maybe a little bit at the waste treatment plant. So we're not under consent order for the drinking water side.
Right.
We are for the
We
wastewater
had
side.
some
and the treatment
things
plant.
that we
Yes,
had
sir.
to fix
And we've
there.
done a good bit of those things at the treatment plant at Metro. So we're almost halfway there. A lot of projects and deadlines to go. The force majeure request allows us to spread that peanut butter for an investment of $80 million a year for wastewater. We've been putting $40 million a year in water, about $80 million a year. If we can continue that trend, we can work our way out of this. There are, of course, other things that we have to do that aren't consent decree related as well, but this is helping us renew our system on the wastewater collection side. So that leads us to our request. Clint, what are you asking for? What do you need? So we're going to ask for $120 million. Again, that's 80 million wastewater, 40 million water split to help us with consent decree compliance and make capacity investments on the water side. It's geared toward water quality mainly. And you've heard us talk about these perfluorinated substances. There's about 200,000 in for us to do a treatability study. Yes,
Fire
sir.
hydrant replacement, why isn't that covered by the fire hydrant fee that's paid? Right here
Fire
under
hydrant replacement.
CIP projects, it says fire hydrant
Oh,
replacement,
yes, sir. I'm sorry.
1.5 million.
So the hydrants themselves, and we typically fund the hydrant work out of water and sewer. That's typically the way it's been done. Missy, correct me if I'm wrong. And the fire fee is paying for the fire
There's a hydrant
service.
fee.
There is a hydrant fee, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Why isn't this budgeted in that?
I think that,
Go ahead,
I think
Frank.
it has more to do, Mayor, with the ongoing, monitoring that the fire department does, where they go out and test hydrants every year. I believe that's what that charges.
I think that's right. We need Chief Jenkins to tell us for sure, but traditionally.
I don't know that there's
Saying.
any necessarily a rhyme or reason to it. I think this is how we've just
We've probably
always
done it, but it probably
Yeah.
should go into that category. I mean, because fire hydrant replacement for us is everybody in our service territory, which are not all in the city of Columbia. So, I mean, if there's a way for us to look at that, maybe it's too late now, but in future, incorporating that into that hydrant fee makes sense to me.
Because hydrant fee, if I'm right, is outside city customers. Inside city would not pay a
And I-
hydrant fee or that
I
fine.
think we've also wanted to leave some flexibility there too for older.
Put it on the
Places.
table for discussion
Yeah.
points.
Absolutely. So you can see some of the things that we're doing. It's really a lot of replacing aging infrastructure. Consent decree is geared toward that. Water quality improvements geared toward that as well. So 40 million. We've got Shandon and Rosewood waterline replacement projects on here. Hardin Street Booster Pump Station to help us move water around. You'll see AMI meter change outs, and I know you're thinking, wait a minute, we just spent $40 million on AMI. There were about 4,000 meters that there are roots in the meter box. The contractor couldn't get, they were problematic. It was going to destroy somebody's yard, whatever. We said, well, we'll take care of those. So we're peeling those off and dealing with those separately, the more problematic installations. Again, that's about 4,000 out of 155,000. We only paid the AMI contractor for work completed, so we held that money back and are using it.
How do you bill for,
So is that
Future
an
growth.
ask or is that a leftover? I'm a little
So-
confused on that.
We didn't pay for them. We had some money left over that was washed out. And so now we're asking for new. So it all kind of rolls back into the fund, and now we're identifying a new project. So We didn't do a change order or anything like that. That contractor quoted us pretty routine meter change outs, not more difficult things. So we'll be packaging and bidding. I think it's coming next council meeting, in fact, I believe. So we've got a local contractor will be doing that work. I'm sorry, did someone else have?
Yeah, for all the future growth, Northeast, Garners Ferry, all the new residential growth, how does the new water meter, how do you charge for that, for new service? Is it, are we paying for it in advance? Thinking that Garth is coming, or?
So the meter fee has changed, and there's a different cost now from before. So now you're paying for the digital meter. So there's a meter fee.
Pay for over time through bills?
They pay for it up front. That's the new account. I can't remember off the top of my head.
The account fee is $45.
45. So the new meter fee, have we changed that, Tiffany? I know we talked about it. Okay. So I think, Robert, we need to think about that, the cost. That's the cost of the old analog meter essentially in setting that up. So we may need to.
How much is a new meter?
200.
200, and they're paying 45, we're paying the balance?
We make that up over time, but that's a fee that hasn't been adjusted yet, so.
Like twice the rate though.
Outside the city.
And they're accurate, so that helps as well. So it's that we're not losing revenue there. But that's a great point, Councilman. Thank you. Okay, that's a quick map showing where we'll be making the water improvements, the wastewater improvements, just quick highlights there. East Rocky Branch, some Lower Crane Creek work, some additional funding for the storage tank to match funding that we've already gotten. The Saluda River Force Main Extension is a project that we'll highlight momentarily, and investing heavily in some of the rehabilitation work as well. $80 million in the collection system and a little bit at the treatment plant. So there's a graphical map of where those improvements will be happening.
Clint, can we get at some point an updated cost structure to treat outside city wastewater?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Robert, let's work on that. We will most definitely do that. I wanted to share with y'all a graphic, and I'm getting near the end of my time, and then we'll let Robert come in. I'm sorry for being long-winded. Several years ago, 6 or 8 years ago, we would come to you and we would ask for a certain CIP amount, and we wouldn't be able to deliver that amount. So we might ask for $100 million, and we were only that much again. So we've really been working on our processes to try to make sure that we can crank that work out. And this is a graphic of the last 5 years, and you can show that y'all have awarded us in capital improvement projects $400 million, and we've executed to date $371 million. We believe by the end of the fiscal year, we'll be at about $390 million. So we've refined the process so that what you're granting us, we're able to deliver. Some projects take longer than others, so that it isn't necessarily a year-to-year balance, but looking at the trend over time makes sense. And it's showing that we can deliver through procurement, through legal reviews, through real estate, through working with consultants, we can deliver the work that y'all been asking us to deliver. And we continue to refine that process. I'm going to skip over a couple highlights, just some cool pictures of some of the projects. This one's being completed in May of 2023, this next month, almost a $21 million investment. This one is near Saluda Shoals Park, $15 million, to be completed in June, potentially some recreational pathway there as well. This is rehabilitation work using a lot of trenchless technology, which is much better for the community and pretty darn cost effective, $19 million to be completed in November. We've got a Saluda River Force Main Extension project. Y'all challenged us to think a little differently. We're doing our first construction management at risk project on the water and wastewater side for that extension. It includes negotiating with West Columbia. They were going to put a pedestrian bridge across the river. We were going to tunnel under the river with a force main. Based on the rock quality, that tunnel kept getting deeper and deeper and more expensive. We're going to hang our force main and disguise it underneath their bridge. And we're going to help pay for the bridge and come out way ahead and a lot cheaper. That's the plan, at least. So discussions ongoing with that.
Is it gonna be where they wanted it?
Yes, sir.
At the That's a terrible place for a bridge.
We didn't cite it, but it's where we need our pipe and it's where they want their bridge. So that came together fairly well.
Oh,
We'll
man.
have some graphics for you and there'll be some.
You're gonna
public comment.
ruin a natural phenomenon on the Saluda River by putting a bridge there.
Okay. It's West Columbia's bridge, sir. We're just hanging a pipe underneath it. It was by far the most affordable way for us to get from point A to
At the
point B.
rapids on the Saluda River where our parking lot is, and thousands of people will be viewing that area, and it's gonna be screwed up by a bridge.
You mean the power lines haven't already screwed up the view?
That's exactly where they are, yes, sir. So,
It's a terrible place for a bridge.
Eyes away from the power lines, I don't think it's an issue.
we are on the cusp of releasing a request for expression of interest to convert our biogas through a public-private partnership to energy. And so we think that'll be a nice project, and hopefully we can find a good business partner to work and look at expanding those partnerships.
Where are we on solar?
On solar, we are close to a solar farm at our Lake Murray water treatment plant. In a delay in Metro still, so we decided to move that funding for,
That contract's still good at Metro, or do you need to put another RFP out? Because that's sitting on a close to dang near 4 years.
yes, sir. I think we need to execute Lake Murray and then probably resolicit for Metro. Absolutely. So,
We're gonna use the power at Lake Murray, correct?
yes, sir. That's right. Yes, sir. That's the plan. Okay, any questions before Robert gets up here and delivers the biscuits? Thank y'all for your time. I appreciate that. Sorry we were long-winded.
Thank you.
Howard, so this will be right where the Saluda River Walk is?
Yeah, it'll be this, you know where the Ranger House is and the parking lot?
Yeah.
Candy Lane. It'll be on the west side of that opening there. It'll
That'll be hideous.
be terrible.
That's where you're supposed to launch the rafting,
Yeah.
But you're gonna have, now you have a launch to get in there.
but an ugly bridge too.
Well, you do wanna get across, right?
You can swing from the
I mean,
bridge
I
and
mean-
drop in.
If y'all wanna install a zip line across.
I would
I'm
love a
in.
zip line. I'd choose a zip line any day over.
Robert?
Hopefully the bridge is better looking than the train track.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, everyone at the meeting. So we're here today to follow up and kind of build on our previous presentation regarding the financial plan and the financial performance of the water sewer system. You know, we'll highlight a few items and points that you've seen before as it relates to the drivers, you know, why we're here, and then we'll jump into the financial plan. You know, we keep highlighting these key components because, you know, it's at the core of what we do, it's at the core of what the utility does in serving customers and trying to assure that customers are served at, you know, the lowest possible costs. So jumping right in, and as I go through, if there are any questions, please stop me, and ask. No problem, no worries. We're performing an independent review of the water and sewer system financials, which includes revenues and expenses. We're really looking about understanding, what your operating and capital requirements are, and discussing your results as such. Going about understanding what it takes to serve existing customers from a cost of service perspective, and then putting together the plan as it relates to designing rates around, how big is the pie, who's driving the cost, and then how you design the rates or recover the rates required so that you recover, the sufficient revenues to run your system appropriately. So moving into the drivers, ultimately, the goal and objective is to continue to run a sustainable utility system through, integrated financial planning, stakeholder engagement in the form of understanding what your customers require. For example, the examples around customer service, directly impacts how you operate on a daily basis as it relates to, let's say, for example, call times, and how you optimize, customer reps' time as it relates to the customer service component, for example. And then, striving to achieve business excellence. Mr. Shealy showed and demonstrated the benchmarking survey and how you ranked, and that in some areas you're doing better than others. That's a part of the path and the process and roadmap, to achieve business excellence. In trying to get there, items like revenue stability, how resilient your operations are around meeting your operating and capital programs, your consent decree requirements, and are you appropriately staffed? If, as we were talking earlier, if there's a break, how long it takes you to get there, what's the quality of the repair? That's all a part of achieving business excellence. And then making sure that you take into consideration the current market conditions, for example, inflation, for example, having the appropriate resources to do the job and making sure you're integrated with the market to attract and keep and optimize those resources. So this is all a part of, operational resilience and running and meeting your requirements to achieve a stable, operating practice or stable utility. So we've seen this slide, and really what I want to highlight here is the fact that you've gone through some significant events, and in doing that, you've stayed resilient, and you continue to be resilient. And it's because of the efforts and the practices and the strategy and policy this group have put in place to drive performance within the utility. We've seen some of these items, Clean Water 2020, you're implementing the AMI program. Historically or recently, a few years back, you had that flooding event. You're, building out your stormwater utility. All these things have an impact as it relates to how you operate. So I'll go to the next slide. So in developing the FY24 financial plan, we have a few assumptions that we wanted to highlight, and we're providing these assumptions as an initial baseline so that you get a feel and flavor of some of the items we had to consider and how we went about incorporating these items, as a part of developing that financial plan. Test years FY24, estimated revenues for the total system is about 188 million. We're looking at about a 0.75% growth in customers over the entire forecast period. The forecast period is designated from FY24 to 28. We're incorporating user rate revenues, which is represented by that 188 million, but also additional revenue sources. For example, interest income, expansion fees, other miscellaneous fees such as meter installation fees. All your revenue sources are a part of that calculation as is highlighted in your budget. Additionally, your operating expenses are about 113 million. You just saw that Mr. Shealy highlighted your capital plan, which is about 120 million, 80 to wastewater, 40 to water. And then for the period FY 2024, your existing debt service is about $50.2 million, with a plan to go about issuing or tendering or seeking, additional debt over the forecast period.
How much of that is principal and how much is interest?
So I can't tell you off the top of my head, but we can definitely get you that answer.
Thanks.
So my apologies there. And we have some pay-go as it relates to your capital requirements. And again, we're trying to implement or continuing to implement a balanced approach to understanding your operating and capital requirements. looking at a combination of debt and other sources to fund your capital requirements, and then using your financial metrics as a guide to establish the financial plan as it relates to debt service coverage, funds on hand, et cetera, et cetera.
So do we charge the same rate for residential, commercial, nonprofit, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so everything's different. And all that's, how is that set up?
So, okay.
In-town residential, out-town residential, we got in-town commercial, out-of-town commercial. The two nonprofits pay the same other than the government, that pays less than anybody.
How long has that been like that, forever?
Yeah. So I'm not going to say.
Nobody in here much older than us, so.
I was not here for the first 50 years.
He's on our level. He's
Okay,
living here.
I got it.
So I wouldn't say it's like been that way forever, but the nature of the development of rates is based on, at the beginning we saw that slide that said the three components: financial plan, cost of service, and rate design. It's based on trying to set up rates that reflect how you provide that service, what portions of your customer base / customer class / customer groups, how they drive costs, and then designing rates as such. So for example, the nature of residential service may be different than commercial or industrial.
So you would, I don't want to put words in your mouth, you would say it's based on market value.
It wouldn't be based on market value per se, because you have
It's based on cost value.
it's based on the costs. It's based on the cost to provide that service, and the cost to provide that service is driven by the demand and how customers within specific customer groups, for example, residential, commercial, industrial.
So if I asked the question then to look at the cost versus the revenue, it would be, I would be able to figure that out. That would back up that statement.
Correct. It would, because that's the nature by which rates are developed, and that's the nature by which, we look at the total pot of funds and, how costs compare. And, that's a pie that we described at the beginning.
You also have to factor in the political side of it too, because these rates are set by a political body. And you'll see some years in there where we were not able to get a rate increase that had to be compounded into a future rate increase. And so I think Robert would say it's better if we do small amounts all along.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand the modeling of it, not so much the outcome, more the process.
The modeling, in my mind, would be to give the best water service for the most reasonable rate.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, and
Not comparing ourselves to other people, just modeling ourselves after ourselves.
Yeah,
No,
I guess what I'm trying to make sure though is I'm
We usually have a chart in here that shows where we fit.
I'm fine with his answers. What I don't like doing is picking winners and losers. So I'm against picking winners and losers. So I'm trying to look at the fairness of our pricing model, and he's explained the fairness of our pricing model. So I'm fine with it.
And it's a fair question as it relates to the pricing and how we go about, developing the rates. And then, but coming back to your
There's no wrong answer except picking winners and losers.
Yeah, and that's a part of the balance that we have to go through in designing and looking at the financial plan on an annual basis. But coming back to the statement about this group and what you do, you're absolutely correct. You provide a willingness to make that decision and the willingness to implement the rates, which is a big component as it relates to looking at the utility from a management perspective, how you support and fund the requirements of the system. And from a policy perspective, you all drive the policy around, how we operate, how you operate, how you maintain, achieve, and generate the revenues you need. So from a policy perspective, you drive and provide a willingness to make the decision to increase these rates. And you're absolutely correct. Historically, there have been some lumps, but the goal as best we can, and I know we've been coming out of COVID and it's been tough for everyone and we understand, but smaller increases over time, and consistent increases over time, pan out a little better typically.
But growing
that's
the
not
system
always
would
the
solve
case.
that as well, Robert. Because I
Absolutely.
disagree
Right,
with your
you're right.
statement down there, 0 revenue increase approved. No, that would have been a rate increase. There's a difference between revenue and rate.
You're correct. There is a difference between revenue and rate.
So my question is if we didn't have parking lots everywhere and we had customers there and we had all these businesses growing, then we would have the revenue that we need.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the rate increase. So it has to be a little bit of balance of both. We need to keep growing our system. We also have to look at, all right, well, what kind of rate increase do you have? But if we can grow the system, that means it's less, which means less impact on our citizens.
And exactly what you're saying, Mr. Mayor, is what we do. I totally understand what you're saying as it relates to the difference in revenues and rates. Revenue here is in the context of the rate, the actual rates that are in place, and if there are any increases in those rates, and the revenues that come from the increases in those rates. We highlighted that growth is about 0.75%.
Well, that's why I asked that question though about Scout.
Scout,
So, I mean,
exactly.
that ties back to the mayor's point. And again, so I'm okay again with the concept of cost value, but I might not be okay in another situation because that's value. Okay, it's not about your cost. So value is about value. It can be about your cost, but it's also about the service you provide that's not just important, but solely important to somebody.
And it also ties back to the point I was making when you asked about Scout, is that we told the line as
Right.
well there.
Yeah, right.
Because the value, they saw the value, they needed the product. Why would we have
Right, and it could be
incentivize
different
it,
value
you
for
know,
different customers and different projects. So,
Exactly.
so that's why I think it's important that we tie back to this concept and, sometimes we get hung up on, the only way we can provide revenue is through taxes, which is not true. It's absolutely not true.
We'd love to see,
Go ahead, Clint.
no, I didn't mean to walk.
Go
Ms.
ahead.
Herbert had the floor, Mr. Cheatham.
Go ahead.
Well, no, so what I wanted to ask is, because I agree with that as we grow the system, but how long does it take to see the, a material change in revenue if you're looking at growing the system?
And thank you for that. That's a very good clarifying question. We didn't bake in any Scout growth into this year's model because it's going to take
2 years out.
We're 2 years out. We did bake in Mark Anthony Brewing maturing as they go. We're hoping some of the residential growth in that part of our system, but we didn't want to be too overly aggressive. We'd love to see that 0.75 go to 1, maybe 1.5. That'd be great, but we're trying to be realistic.
But to your point though, so what I'm trying to glean out of all this is, so your residential growth might not be necessarily as valuable as your commercial growth or as your big project. So I want to understand, because I'm going to spend the next 2.5 years of my life talking about growth and talking about other revenue sources other than taxes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And trying to make it easier to do stuff here versus harder to do stuff here. So
So-
all this can be done at the same time, and they're not mutually exclusive.
Yes, sir. I hear you loud and clear. One of the things that we did in terms of, we talked about residential and then the non-residential rate. We also have a large user rate that we implemented 2 or 3 years ago, 2 years ago, right? That was instrumental. We would not have won Mark Anthony Brewing. And we were able to use that same rate, and it's for anybody using over 300,000 gallons a day on average for that month. And so we use that as an economic development.
I would-
and improvement tool.
And all those folks who are listening to this meeting, if you're a big water user, we got capacity, come on.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
So anyway, all that's smart. It's just, I need a higher level of understanding about this for my own personal.
Yes, sir.
And I think I still need clarity though. If we go full forward and we're doing the big development, is it still gonna take us 10 years to really see a material difference? Because 25% of a point is, you know, not a whole lot getting to the 1 or the 1.5. I'm just trying to figure out what does that look like? Because what we always have is high expectations and we expect to see the impact in a year or two. It doesn't sound like it'll be a year or two. It'll take time, even with the aggressiveness.
Yes, ma'am, but I think we're starting to see the Mark Anthony in our return. We're seeing great benefit from AMI, improved registration from our meters. And Robert, I don't mean to steal your thunder on that, but and we look at that growth rate every year. So we track that statistic of new customers that we're adding so that we can project out conservatively and try to be appropriate in how we do that.
Sorry.
Robert, on your project assumptions page, you say the 0.75% growth in accounts. Do you mean growth in revenue?
No, I mean
Number of accounts?
the number of accounts.
Number of accounts. Okay.
And that's including residential, commercial,
Correct.
everything?
Correct.
So the projections that you had put in here for reference only, do we just, over the last several years, have we just assumed it would stay constant at 0.75%?
No, actually, we've adjusted it. You know, I know in a few years back, we were at 1.5%, 1.752. We've adjusted it based on what's happening currently in the economy and, you know, what we're seeing for, like, let's say, for example, construction starts, et cetera, et cetera. So it's adjusted based on the current market conditions.
45%.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to add, as y'all were talking about the projects, and Clint did hit on Mark Anthony. We really can take a look back, and I'll put a report together for y'all, for all of y'all. Clint, Ryan Coleman, and I will work on it. It's not just what will be coming up with Scout, but it's also what we anticipate with Mark Anthony, what we've already received. Those have reflected rate increases in the past, and I would go back one more on the Juicy plant as well. We actually took a look at what our anticipated revenues that were going to be coming in from that, and that actually adjusted the rate a couple years ago. So just from a historical sense, we can go back and take a look at a few of these, tell you how much revenue they generated, and take a look at what we actually anticipated. It did have a positive effect in lowering the rate increase. It's one of the things that Clint, previously Joey, Ryan Coleman, and I had talked about. We probably didn't shout it out to the world. This is probably a larger discussion on it, but going forward on these type of projects, we can continue to have that discussion and really highlight how that has a positive effect.
Clint, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
The capital program, I mean, based on what we've been able to achieve over the last 3 cycles, maybe 4, we really gonna spend $120 million. I mean, should we not pull that back to what we reasonably believe we're gonna get? Because that's gonna affect our rate increase. And obviously, we have been very generous to our community by not getting a rate increase, but as we know, everything that we touch has a cost increase today from equipment to chemicals. I mean, we saw a very large increase in chemicals. There's gonna be some type of rate, but is there some balance there? Do we really need to build on that today when we may not get there?
Mayor, I would answer it this simply. I don't believe we can meet our consent decree obligations if we don't do $120 million this year.
But I guess where I'm trying to drive at is that's great on paper, but historically we haven't done that.
Yes, sir,
And that's not gonna change based on supply and demand either today. So I would ask that we just look at it hard before we make the final.
And we will, Mayor. I think we demonstrated an ability. I said $400 million over the past 5 years. That's what y'all had, the blended amount y'all had given us. So that's about $80 million a year. And so the manager and I have had this discussion as well. She brought up that exact same point. Are we able to process 120? We think we can. We think we can do it. We think we refine the process enough. And particularly until we hear about that force majeure extension, if we don't coming off the heels of a smaller capital program last year, I think we really need to show 120. That's my
I guess,
recommendation.
to me, showing and doing, it doesn't make sense because there's a cost delta in there.
There is, yes, sir.
And there's no reason to create a cost that's not necessary if it isn't. So I would just, let's double check
Okay.
that. And then, we'll make a decision from there, obviously, but
Yes, sir.
and we trust you and your judgment, but just historically, it doesn't look like we'll get there.
Okay. So, this slide is provided as a highlight or as a reference to, highlight what was forecasted last year when we're going through this process for this year, and the following years. And, coming back to the point as it relates to how revenue is realized and understood for some of these projects, industries, say, for example, AMI had an impact on the revenues, and we are seeing some of the impact.
So did COVID.
No, you're right. No, seriously, COVID did have an impact, and as it relates to the movement of usage, within your customer groups,
Well,
and resetting that usage post-COVID.
Well, even what we had to write off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the number of accounts that
I
were
mean,
delinquent.
that's a rate increase.
There's a few ways you can look at it, but as you're saying, the reality is it did have an impact, and you had to kind of work with the impact and absorb it. But you're able to do that because of the nature and the quality of the system that you're running and the planning that kind of plan for those unforeseen events. But, to the greater point that we made about how the revenue sources are realized, how do we bring all these revenue sources together? Every year we go through the process of looking at all the sources and seeing, if costs that we're currently incurring are meeting the budget, if they need to be adjusted. And, we made a little bit of an improvement this year than what we forecasted last year. And, a few items, for example, AMI, looking at certain costs, looking at certain revenue buckets, kind of, played a part in increases that are proposed. Okay.
Well, I still think, going back to the points that have been made, the rate increase needs to be reflective of the fact that it should not be the only source of revenue to support some of our projects. And I think going back to the 120 million number and looking at potentially future investments, I do think that there's a possibility for us to shave this down a little bit.
Okay. I agree with what you're saying, and that's going to come in like a slide because
Good, I'm glad I geared you up.
We did do that, and we did shave it down a little. And for example, this minimum allowance adjustment, it's an adjustment that had an impact on the financial plan. So a minimum allowance, it's referred to a reference as a fixed volume of flow that is billed as a part of your base charge, and that's for the water delivered to customers. So the nature of your existing rate, you have a fixed component, which is your meter-based component, and then you have a volumetric component, okay? You have a declining block, meaning with more usage, the rate gets lower for your volumetric component. And what this component does is say, for usage at, let's say, 0 to 3 CCFs, or the first few blocks, there's no charge because that usage is included in the minimum allowance, okay? Currently, your existing minimum allowance is 0 to 3 CCFs. Typically it has impacts as it relates to affordability, providing assistance or support or some stability for low use users. It helps people that are in fixed income, for example, plan out their bills. So there's a lot of affordability and other benefits that come with establishing a minimum allowance. You currently bill in cubic feet. Based on the implementation of the new billing system, you're starting to bill in 1,000 gallons. Based on your current minimum allowance, which is 3 CCFs or 2,244 gallons. Usage is about 72 gallons per day. That's the estimate. We know with conservation and other activities to manage and protect, water resources for cost and, other reasons, we're seeing daily usage come down some. So there is a proposal to make an adjustment to the minimum allowance to first of all align with your current and existing billing system that bills per 1,000 gallons. And the proposal is to move that minimum allowance to 0 to 2,000 gallons. So what that means is currently the minimum allowance is 2,244. So that 244 gallons would now not be included in the new minimum allowance. What that is reflective of is about 65 gallons per day in usage. So it's kind of in alignment with some of the trends we're seeing as it relates to daily usage. But the impact we will see is about somewhere in the range of about a $1.5 million pickup in revenues, upon implementing that minimum allowance. Let me stop there to see if you all have any questions.
When do we plan to go to gallons rather than cubic feet?
July the 1st.
I wanted to add this, and thank you, Robert. We bill in gallons of 100 cubic feet units, and we get questions quite often about these mysterious units. People don't know what 100 cubic feet looks like, but they can figure out a gallon or 1,000 gallons. And so part of the AMI implementation, once we got essentially mature with that penetration of meters, is that we would move our billing to units of 1,000 gallons, which is what a lot of utilities do. And so this seemed like a logical transition to true up instead of 3 units of 100 cubic feet, give 2,000 gallons. You can't buy that 10-gallon per flushed, toilet anymore. These water hogs, everything you put in is a water sipping fixture. So we're seeing that per capita demand go down. We still think that's a pretty fair allotment of water for that base fee, which is $8.53 per month for an inside city customer. I'm sorry, Rob.
So most people would have no idea that even happened. I mean, almost everybody, right?
I can't say that nobody would have an idea, but, there's an adjustment and it's a smaller adjustment.
My point
Miss
though is-
G and Greg Park will be calling you, don't worry.
I'll forward that to Teresa. So my point though is, if that allowance is 2,200, but over time, that's been going down because of just normal
Usage conservation.
usage and conservation and, new equipment. So most people wouldn't be affected because it wouldn't affect them.
To your point, you're saying the impact based on what's happening.
Minimal because of other circumstances other than water usage. It's water reality.
Correct. And that became one of the considerations along with the billing consideration Mr. Shealy highlighted, that drove the team, to make the decision to do this now.
Okay.
Yeah. I agree to change over to gallons rather than cubic feet is a good thing to do, but the thing I don't agree with is that this will have an impact on the lowest water users. There are a lot of people that try to keep their water bill below the minimum. That they don't understand cubic feet, but they do understand that if I work real hard on water conservation, that I can keep it only for the minimum charge of the meter. And this is gonna put 244 gallons less for them to use without hitting a charge. And there are people out there that
need to have that.
don't use. But
That's what I guess that's my question is, how many people do we think this would affect? And I guess what I'm hearing is because of not just, there's more to it than just how many times you flush the toilet.
Yeah, it will affect folks that have usage now in this new third block, which would be from 2,001 gallons to 3,000. The impact is going to be, and I'm not trying to minimize the impact by no means, but it's going to be small, cents, tens of cents. But it's an impact, and it's an impact that we consider. That revenue you see is for the entire 12 months. So you're talking about what, 150,000 in additional revenues per month, given the big impact and positive benefit on the system. You know, that 150,000 per month, then divided by, you know, the total customers that you serve, for example, you know, I mean, because everybody would come through that third block, for example. So that's kind of the impact. And, you know, by no means am I standing here trying to minimize the impact or say it's not important, because we understand the cost to provide service and, you know, what it takes for people to pay for service. But there is a multiple benefit and a balancing of these priorities that we considered as a part of looking at it. I'm sorry.
Because I'm the only one that raises my hand.
I couldn't see your hand.
So honestly, I mean, what I would want us to all to consider, if we're talking about $180 million budget or revenues that we think, so we're talking about bringing it up 1.5, which to me is not any money based on the overall budget. So what I would say is really think hard on whether or not making that decision is worth it to get 1.5 million. And our revenues are currently 1.88. We still won't be at 190 million.
So let me highlight one thing. You know, the team wanted to make sure with everything that's happening,
I know y'all looking at
you
everything.
know, we provide, as we always do, full disclosure on everything and the impacts and the multiple considerations. One of the big considerations of doing this is the fact that you bill in thousands of gallons, and billing that additional 244 gallons could have an impact as it relates to converting that flow and spending the time to convert that flow on a monthly basis as a part of your billing process and your billing cycle.
That's why I say July 1 is the time to make the change, and I think the change is a good change, but it is gonna have an impact on the people for that 244 gallons.
You're exactly right.
Yeah,
You're exactly right.
We hadn't talked about this aspect of an adjustment, Robert. So is the purpose behind it outside of, we've always said we needed to make the switch, but is there something about doing this, I guess, to Councilwoman Herbert's point with the 1.5 million estimated revenue impact? Is that some attempt to offset what we were just discussing about the rate?
That really was not the purpose of this adjustment.
That's not
that has become
that wouldn't even be.
I'm not going to call it, I'm sorry, I'm not going to call it an unintended consequence, because it's not an unintended consequence, but it is a consequence. I think the bigger driver, which was a part of the AMI process, was aligning the way and procedures by which you bill on a monthly basis with how the system reads, so that you can have an alignment, you know, of how the system operates and talks, the customer service, the customer billing system. And as a result of making that alignment and not incurring the cost and what it takes to bill that additional 244, this was what was proposed. But as a result of considering this adjustment, this is one of the impacts. And we just wanted to highlight what that impact looks like.
Robert, what would be the difference in putting the minimum at, instead of 2,500? So you would be giving them an extra, how many gallons is that? 50, not many more gallons.
Well, they're already getting the first.
Yeah, well, I'm trying,
right?
his problem is getting the calculations done efficiently for the billing purposes. And my thought is that we're gonna have people that are counting on that 244, so let's give them 2.5 245 instead of 244. We'll give them an extra 200 gallons or whatever it'll take to make it an easy calculation for us, but not a bill increase for the ones that are doing the minimum.
So, okay, so to answer your question, the first part of your question, that would somewhat have an inverse, because now you're giving more minimum allowance, and that would, by its nature, that would provide more support, because now you're increasing the minimum allowance, which would then turn that number into a negative, meaning the utility would pay as such. But that still doesn't solve the issue around how you set the readings per 1,000 gallon, because whether it's 244 or 500, you would still, the reading would be outside of the per 1,000 gallon read that the system does. So that's the consideration here.
So you either gotta go
I fear your
2,000 or
next question.
3,000. You can't
I knew that was
go
going to be the next
5,000. You can't put a decimal in there, Robert?
No, not based on the billing system as I
Put
understand.
$1,000,005 into the payment assistance plan program for folks and call it a day.
Let me just make a recommendation of data that we can share. We can go in our system and we can pull out how many customers are paying a minimum bill, and then how many are within this bandwidth that we're talking about for the 244. How many are below that? How many are above that? Everybody's going to pay above 2,000 gallons. You're talking about, most concerned about the people that are using between 2,000 and 2,244 gallons.
If I take more showers
Yes, sir. And so we hear what you're saying. So let us get some numbers for you, and I can share that by email.
I wanna know how many people are paying the minimum amount now.
Okay.
Because they're the ones that are gonna notice that 244.
If they're using more than 2,000, we can look at their usage.
They're using less.
Oh, you,
Yes, some of those guys.
We'll look at their average usage and see how many are affected in that band itself. I think that's something we can, team, doesn't that seem like something we can do?
Well, can we do that in addition to, because senior citizens has to take, they're gonna take home a shot. Is there any way we could break that number out, 65 and older?
There's a lot.
I mean, we do have in our system,
See, I think because.
to there.
I don't think we've got
We don't
that.
have what our
Demographic
market percentages are.
It's not in our database.
That's the one.
But I hear what you're saying. Let me get those
Well,
numbers.
the impactation, it would certainly be good if we could get that.
Impactation.
Let me finish, please. Y'all have got these sidebars going.
No, I said impactation.
But that's where the cost is. You can look at it.
Yeah. If we could look at perhaps if there
Don't
is
email it.
a data line, age line there, and we could look at that to see whether or not.
Go ahead, Robert.
That could very well be a.
what if we get to 6% increase and leave the 244?
If we go too deep in this,
Or you can do a fund,
just put on
Give the
these.
idea of.
which is E. That means they can
Do we have a work session?
process, but if there's a fund percentage.
We're just getting so tight on.
I just got to run at 5:30, that's why I'm saying.
Okay.
We have a meeting after Monday, that's all, so we can
What's on the
call it in.
All right.
Okay. So
Well, you're
Are we good to continue? Okay.
Yeah, we don't.
So moving on. So some of the base assumptions or components for FY24, we're looking at a revenue increase of about 6.52, 0.25% growth, 120 million CIP, a revenue impact as it relates to the proposal for the minimum allowance adjustment. There's specific increases in costs as driven by inflation and the availability of resources. And we utilize the financial metrics around debt service coverage and fund balance to drive the plan. You know, as we're seeing here, the proposed increase is about a 6.52. You know, over time, we're looking at about a 7.7% For 25, 7.46. For 26, 6.26. For 27, and a 5.16 for 28. Line 11 highlights the total revenues, and it grows from about 204.7 to 267.2 million. Over the forecast period, we meet our operating expense requirements, line 12, and our total debt service requirements, line 16. We fund some capital projects, meet our transfers, fund capital outlays, and we provide a growing operating balance, and we meet debt service coverage. Any questions here as it relates to the financial plan?
That is a much better figure than I thought we were gonna be looking at, and I'm proud of you for getting it that way.
Yes, the team was collectively. Okay, moving on. Okay, moving on. So just highlighting again and refreshing, the major components of the plan. We've seen, this slide, and all we're reflecting is, the value of the water that you're getting. Over time, if you look at, based on your current rates, you're paying, just about, 0.004 cents per gallon. Your daily water cost is about 76 cents, and your daily wastewater cost is about 141 cents for all the value in the services that you provide, or that water that service provides. Over time, when you look at, the industry, for the period 2008 through 2020, we've seen that in aggregate, the sewer system and water system respectively, rates are going up 5.8 to 6%. And, as a system, you are below 5%. So you're tracking a little behind what's happening in the industry. So what this means, consider looking at and approving the proposed FY24 adjustment. Trying to understand if the billing system can accept and implement that minimum allowance. It's key that as you go into 24, you continue to monitor the operating and capital requirements and how these budgeted costs perform, and then just continue to monitor the financial performance and how you do against some of your metrics, just to continue to keep a close look on how you're performing financially. So that's the conclusion.
System allowance approach, instead of the total budget, like actually saying, yes, we're gonna put this into effect on this date. How does that play into the fee,
The adjustment we were
the
just talking
adjustment,
about,
yeah.
I
Is
would-
that a separate issue?
It's all calculated as a part of the adjustment, meaning the entire pot of
Upon
revenues.
approving a budget, that would trigger the new approach,
No.
the new reading.
Okay, now, the approval of the adjustment is different separately, as I understand, but the revenues and the impact is taken into the budget, yeah.
All right.
So the $1.5 million less in revenue, if we don't do the billing adjustment, would have to be calculated into the rate, vice or look for trimming, that sort of thing.
Yes, sir.
So that was my question earlier though, because I hadn't been briefed on this part. Because I would have asked these questions to y'all and it'd give you a little bit of guidance on this. So that adjustment that you showed the council to do the the new proposed minimum. If they don't decide to deal with that right now, the rate goes up a little bit potentially.
It will have an impact on that increase. Yes, ma'am.
So I think I think we need to break that out and not muddy the water with that right now. I'm not saying they're not gonna do it, but I think you gotta show them separately, which I think is what Ms. Herbert was asking. Because I don't know that the 1.5, in my opinion, too. I agree. I don't know that that's,
Well, we don't know, we haven't
Worth.
even agreed that we're gonna do a 6.5% increase. We may come back and say we're only doing a 5% increase. We don't know that yet.
That's right.
so can we come back and show it two different ways?
And we'll give you the number of customers based on last year's usage that would fall within that envelope as well. I think that'll be good.
It's a billing
Okay.
policy decision that has a budgeting.
Impact as well.
Right,
Right.
right. It could, or it doesn't have to.
No, right.
Right.
I was gonna say, is that a staff decision to change that? Or is that?
Any,
Yeah, it needs to be changed, but I don't know that we need to, I think we need to talk about them in two separate.
I'm just leery, man. We didn't do anything in 23, and then in 24, we're back to 6.5. Is that what we need to be, or is that negotiable?
No, this is all just for information today, correct?
Yeah, we could work
Is it
on this.
negotiable? Even when we get to that point, is it negotiable?
You can negotiate.
That's what we
If you
did
go-
last, that's what we
go
used to
down,
do.
You just won't get all your projects done.
Isn't that-
Bad idea.
If it goes down.
Okay, so
That's
stormwater, thank you, Robert.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Robert.
That's what we used to
Are we gonna get to H-Tax today?
Come on down, Dana.
Good afternoon. How are y'all? I'm Dana Higgins. I'm the Director of Engineering for you, Mr. Round. Welcome. So with me today, we are going to do a stormwater update, but I brought some of my team with me. I'd like to just point out, we've got my Deputy Director, Andrea Bowling, with us, our Assistant City Engineer for Design, Francis Bryan, and AJ Jesse's our Stormwater Manager. And also with Woolpert, I have Hal Clarkson, who will be presenting with me about our utility rate structure, as well as Trevor Gorin and Molly Davis with Woolpert. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Hal's going to pass out a information sheet for y'all to get an update on some of the projects that have been constructed, under construction, and that will be coming forward shortly. So just a little background, back in 2017, we had a utility rate study done on our stormwater utility fee, just to see how we look at our projects that we had identified and how much funding we needed to get those projects accomplished. Each year, we had around $3 million to spend in capital, which definitely did not accomplish the $93 million that we had identified. So back in 2017, we jumped up $5 from $6.80 to $11.80 and have gone up incrementally. We paused in 2020 and also in 2022, going up incrementally. And currently, our rate is at $14.15. With the funding that we have, we've been working on hydraulic models throughout the system. We've accomplished 9 construction projects. A lot of those projects are outlined on the 11 by 17 Hal just passed out. Under construction, we have 2, Penn Branch and the Benedict Low Impact Development Project. And we have 10 right now that are in design, and some of them that you know is Yorkshire Belvedere, Shandon, and Rocky Branch. Right now, the 2 under construction, Penn Branch is it's a street, it's an earthen as well as concrete open channel, runs through kind of the east side, District 4. The walls were falling in, the flood had impact on this area, so we identified a project and $7 million. We should be done with that construction by early 2024. LJ is the contractor working on that right now. In addition, we have Benedict Allen area where the low impact development, we're removing impervious area and installing bioretention cells, just trying to disconnect some of that immediate runoff and reduce the amount of water quantity. For our upcoming CIP, we are asking for $13.1 million. We are going to continue to evaluate the Rocky Branch watershed. We have some great opportunities to help address the flooding in 5 Points, as well as it continues down to Whaley and Maine, where we have a choke point and have some culvert improvements needed there. We're going to be moving our Belvedere design into construction. So we're asking for $4 million there. Queen Street, right to construction. at the beginning of the fiscal year. We also have projects in St. Mark's Woods. Louisa Street is a man-made wetlands where we are bringing in water quality in a city property. So we'll be constructing that in the upcoming year. And we want to continue our program management to do our system inventory and condition assessment, and that's been very successful. And also have funds set aside for undefined projects such as all the three big storms we had last year in Washington and Cherokee. Y'all probably are aware of that, where we had the 72-inch, the joint separated, and we really had not identified that as a project, but it became a project. So definitely want to have that covered. To date, we have awarded $18.6 million in consultant contracts and $42 million in construction contracts. Spent to date is $43 million, with about 70% in construction and 30% in consultant. For the
30% in consultants?
Oh, so yes, I'm glad you asked that, because we actually talked about this internally. Right now, we've been doing a lot of feasibility study. We haven't moved it to construction yet, so we have it's been heavier on consultant, but we're rolling those into design and construction in the next upcoming years. That is, you're right, that is definitely higher than what we expect, but they have been evaluating all the pinch points.
What do you think it will levelize out?
Probably in the next 2 years, maybe. Yeah, because Shandon's a $20 million project, and we've been working through the design, and right now we're starting easement acquisition on the west watershed. And the east is about 60% complete. So we're just working through the construction plans now. But yeah, we're going to start, it's going to start getting heavier construction. Some of the initiatives we have heard from constituents, I know y'all have as well, on what opportunities they have for reducing their stormwater utility fee. Right now, we have a credit manual that allows up to 30% reduction for single-family residential by installing BMPs for water quality. We have a water quality special protection area that was formed for Gills Creek watershed. That is an impaired watershed. So we had developed and worked with Owensfield Park to create best management practices to reduce the amount of contaminants in the runoff before it gets to Gills Creek. So people can get up to 60% reduction. And right now we are evaluating a water quantity. We don't have a water quantity special protection area, but we're looking at one citywide, which would allow us to grant up to 60% reduction. And we expect to roll that out at the end of this year, calendar year. So with that, I'm going to introduce Hal Clarkson, who has taken a look at our rate structure to see what the forecast is and a recommendation of what we're doing in the future.
Thank you, Dana, and thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll try and be brief with these out of respect for your time, but obviously if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. We were asked to update an existing study that was performed by our friends over at Black & Veatch back in 2017, basically verify your cost of service moving forward, look at any rate recommendations that might come out of that, also look at fee reductions such as credits, collections, and your billing policies, and then compare with some similar communities, a benchmarking exercise similar to what was performed over on the water wastewater side. Just as a reminder, your stormwater utility cost of service really gets split among two departments: engineering, which has your stormwater engineering division, and real estate, and then public works, which has your storm drainage maintenance activities along with street sweeping. We started with the FY 22-23 approved budget and an existing, and I just noticed that we have a typo here. I guess I'm trying to give your ratepayers a slight reduction. That should be $14.15 per month, not $14.05. But that is your current equivalent residential unit, meaning that your residential ratepayers pay $14.05 or $14.15 per month. Anyone that's a non-residential user, we look at the equivalent amount of impervious area that they have, how many, similar to the size of a house, multiply that times the $14.15, and that becomes their annual or their monthly rate. So if you've got 3 times as much impervious area, rooftops, and driveway area as a residential unit, then you pay 3 times as much. There are a few exemptions to the rates, to your fee structure, supported by the ordinance, very few, which is a good thing. And then you do have a credit manual that Dana referenced earlier. We had some basic assumptions that we made on both the cost-related and revenue-related side. The two that I would point out is we used a 10-year rolling average of 2.6% on the inflation, but as we know, it's been running a little bit higher than that over the last year or two. And with all the money that's coming out for new infrastructure, we expect construction costs to rise pretty rapidly as well. On the revenue side, when we were wrapping up the study, we got some additional information that the anticipated or projected revenues this year are going to be about 10% higher than what was in the approved budget, another $1.5 million. So we've gone back and incorporated that additional revenue into our calculations. When we looked at the program benchmarking, similar to what was done on the wastewater side, it's a matter of trying to find communities that offer a similar program. It's a little more problematic on the stormwater side sometimes because some communities only pay for their NPDES permit compliance. Others pay for O&M on their stormwater system only, and some do a combined. So we tried to find 5 communities in the region, similar size, similar programs, and see where you are. If you look at a standardized rate, that's your ERU amount per 1,000 square feet, it appears that Columbia is higher than many of your peers. But if you look on the revenue per capita, you're right in the middle. So the 114.51 annually per person fits about in the middle. The caution I would give with this, if you look at that bottom row, this is really the kicker. Columbia right now, and going through this analysis, you're generating sufficient revenue to meet almost all of your needs. When we talk to other communities such as High Point, Raleigh, Chattanooga, Nashville, they're telling us that they're not generating sufficient revenue with their rates to cover their mission. They're not meeting their performance goals. And so, I mean, the takeaway from this is that rather than you guys being a little bit higher than everyone else, you're performing much better in terms of the service you're providing to your customers.
Do those other cities have capital improvement plans that have projects the size of ours on them?
No, sir. No, sir. A few.
Most of them are just ditch cleaning projects.
Primarily routine maintenance. You know, there are a few that have some major projects going on, City of Raleigh and City of Nashville, which is still recovering from some flooding issues a while back. But that's a correct assumption. You've got a major capital improvement program underway. So get to the bottom line recommendations. No increase in your stormwater utility rates for the next year. We do urge some caution with that. You'll have some balance left over in 23, 24, but as you can see, as it projects out, then that'll start potentially running into a negative. So certainly about 3 years down the road, want to take another closer look at where you are. Holding the rates as they are currently keeps your debt service ratio, which was talked about earlier, above the 2.0 goal. And it keeps a healthy cash reserve. And so just a few final recommendations. Hold the rates where they are for next year. Review them annually, obviously, or the revenues annually. And then I would suggest that about 3 years out might be a time to redo the study. Maintain your current billing rate structure. Right now, it's based off of this equivalent residential unit. It's $14.15 per month per residential unit, and then non-residential units are based off of however many ERUs they have. Maintain your current billing mechanism. We looked at alternatives to billing. Right now, your stormwater bill is put on your water and sewer bill. That is by far the industry standard. If you have water and sewer available to you to put on that bill, it makes collections much easier, plus you get monthly collections. If it goes on a tax notice, there's a cost generally associated with that, and you only collect annually. We made a suggestion that you revise the credit manual, which is already underway. Staff was already on that when we made the suggestion. And then finally, continue developing an asset management program, which all your utilities are in the process of doing right now. And this is simply a way of moving from a primarily reactive way of doing business to a more proactive way of maintaining your system, far more effective and efficient use of your dollars. And again, both water, wastewater, and stormwater are already moving in that direction. And I think with that, any questions?
I got a question. Sure. Can you go back to the slide that shows the number of that right there? The non-residential accounts, 2666. What's the service area, Dana, for stormwater?
City limits.
So city limits.
For stormwater, right. Oh, I'm
Well,
sorry.
those numbers right there. So the non-residential accounts, those would be county donut holes? What's that number?
It's actually commercial.
So commercial. So again, I think last time you presented, I asked the question, if there's a house in the South Beltline area that's in the county, there's a house that's right next to it in the city.
Right.
Does the person right next to the city resident pay that $14.15 a month?
They're outside the city limits, they do not. They pay a fee on the Ridgeland County bill.
But still, their runoff goes into our stormwater system that's already comes through there, basically.
That is correct.
The Leesburg Road, where you have Joyner Road, all of that goes all into our system, that entire area. That's all because DOT put in the stormwater drain with no place for it to go other than to us.
And that's my next question is, I think Devil's Ditch has a couple choke points that are managed by different, utilities. One's, the biggest one's managed by the state, and we all know the state doesn't get around to cleaning their stuff very often. So how can we do a better job of maintaining that, obviously without raising, revenue streams?
We do work with planning and development for annexations. We do work with our partners over at Ridgeland County. They do collect a stormwater fee on their tax bill, but it's not enough to take care of.
So that house on South Beltline that's in the county, there is a stormwater fee that
Yes,
comes.
do you know what that is by chance,
I
Hal?
don't, they collect off, it's a fee on their tax bill. I do know
Right,
that. They don't have a
yeah.
water and sewer system that covers
They
it.
pay once a year.
Do they contribute to the maintenance of our inner city stormwater systems?
We, well, for Devil's Ditch, we actually partnered with that big stream restoration project back probably 5 years ago. And right now, we're in the process of going and doing stream restoration work on some of the areas that eroded. And there on Mr. Brown's property, trying to get them to the table as well. But they're not as adequately funded as they need to be.
The answer is no.
Yeah. It seems like the revenues, what limited revenues that come in could actually make a pretty significant dent in our maintenance of a lot of those. So if the conversation's there, it is what it is. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.